The first thing you should know about this presentation is that it's not about some new diet plan or powder or pill. It's about basic human physiology as it relates to long-term weight management. Have you already dieted on a commercial weight loss program? Did you know that 98% of all commercial weight loss programs fail? Today, obesity rates have more than doubled in adults and children since the 1970s. There's a reason why almost all commercial diets fail. It's because the total focus is on weight, as in pounds on the scale. If you take away just one thing from this presentation, it should be this. The key to long-term, permanent weight management is understanding the difference between weight loss and fat loss. So let's take a look at why commercial weight loss programs and restricted calorie dieting fail every time. Commercial weight loss programs would like you to believe that you can literally starve fat right off your body. Unfortunately, it's just not true. In fact, it's just the opposite. Fat is stored energy, and storing fat as a survival mechanism is just one of the many miracles performed by the human body. This survival function started thousands of years ago when prehistoric man often went days without food. To compensate, the body would slow down and adapt to the lack of food. And, as a precaution, it would begin to store fat for later use. In modern times, we know we're simply dieting, but the body does not understand the concept of dieting. Instead, it continues to perceive caloric restriction as starvation and a threat to its own survival. It triggers a response where the body instinctively goes into survival mode and begins to store fat. So isn't it ironic then that restricted calorie diets actually create a fat-storing metabolism? Just the opposite of what most people really hope to achieve. Here's another thing about fat. It requires oxygen to be burned. Do you remember the science experiment where you lit a candle and then extinguished the flame by placing a bottle over it and cutting off its oxygen? The same is true with fat. Just like the flame, fat requires oxygen to be burned. And the only way to get oxygen into your body is through exercise. Commercial weight loss programs all tend to be one size fits all. They don't really take into consideration that people are genetically different, that they live different lifestyles, and have their own individual food preferences. And of course, we all have our own individual caloric intake requirements. To better understand why commercial weight loss programs fail, let's take a look at the fuzzy math behind their weight loss protocol. Even though it was debunked many years ago, the weight loss gurus want us to believe that 3,500 calories is equal to 1 pound on the scale. This is their starting point. Then, with simple math, they calculate that 7,000 calories will equal 2 pounds on the scale. So if they cut out 1,000 calories per day for 7 days, that will equal 7,000 calories, or 2 pounds. This is why you always hear about losing 2 pounds a week in all their advertising. So, using their math, let's play it out. If you weigh 200 pounds and reduce your intake by 1,000 calories per day, or 7,000 calories per week, then, in theory, you should lose 2 pounds per week, right? And if we extrapolate this over 52 weeks, then you'd lose 104 pounds. If we continue with this protocol and the math holds up, well, by the end of the second year, you should totally disappear. Obviously, none of this really works. It's fake physiology and faulty protocol right from the start. First off, as most of us already know, the body is very efficient at storing fat. Next, it's physiologically easier for the body to convert healthy lean tissue into usable energy. So one way to look at it is that commercial diets actually starve muscle, not fat. And finally, most diets do not mandate physical activity. Oh, sure, they may recommend it, suggest it, state that it's a good idea, but they don't make it mandatory. Remember, the body requires oxygen in order to burn fat, and the only way to get oxygen into the body is through exercise. So it's obvious that the protocol is faulty in design, but it gets worse. Just take a look at how a restricted calorie diet program affects your body in other ways. It stresses the body by making it believe it's in starvation mode. Without enough calories and nutrients, the body's immune system is severely compromised. It agitates the central nervous system and creates all kinds of hormonal imbalances. So how does this all play out in the real world? Meet Joe Dieter. He's 40 years old, he's 6'1" and weighs 200 pounds. His body fat is 24%, which he maintains with an intake of about 3,000 calories a day consumed in 2 big meals. In just 10 weeks, Joe is going back to his high school reunion, and he wants to look good. In fact, he would like to look the way he looked when he graduated, back when he weighed 170 pounds. So just like millions of others, he walks into a commercial weight loss center and enrolls in their Quickie weight loss program. After all, he's only got 10 weeks. Of course, the very first thing they do is reduce Joe's caloric intake by 1,000 calories a day. Sound familiar? But it's working. Just look at Joe's results. His weight has dropped from 200 pounds down to 190. He's lost 10 pounds in just 2 weeks. Joe is a really good dieter. And the only thing he notices is that he's feeling a little sluggish. But that's a small price to pay for what he sees on his bathroom scale. So Joe continues a few more weeks on his 2,000 calorie diet until week number 5, when he hits the dreaded plateau. But that's no problem, because luckily for Joe, the Commercial Weight Loss Center just happens to have a Plateau Busters program, where they now cut Joe's intake down to 1,500 calories per day. That's half of what he was consuming just 5 weeks ago. But it worked. Joe dropped 10 more pounds. He's down to 180. However, these days he's feeling really sluggish and seems to require a lot more sleep. And now he's experiencing headaches. On top of that, he's constantly craving sugars and fats. He'd kill for a candy bar or some ice cream. Have you ever wondered why all dieters crave sugars and fats? Why not broccoli and carrots? It's because the body is trying to get the most immediate and usable form of energy possible, and that's sugar and fat. Meanwhile, Joe is the ultimate dieter, and his reunion is right around the corner. So he sucks it up and continues on his 1,500 calorie diet. Lo and behold, he did it. Joe got down to 170 pounds in just 10 weeks. He's been a very successful dieter. He's ready for his reunion. But let's take a look at what really happened. Yes, Joe went from 200 pounds down to 170 pounds in just 10 weeks, and his body fat decreased from 24% down to 22%. So he lost 30 pounds, but only 2% body fat. What this means is that most of the weight Joe lost was healthy, lean tissue. His body literally cannibalized itself as a way to survive. Nonetheless, Joe made it to his reunion, and now the pressure is off. Can you guess what he starts to do the very next week? Joe slowly begins to increase his caloric intake. A little more chicken, a little more rice, an extra slice of toast, a piece of bacon, a little ice cream here and there. Poor Joe doesn't realize his metabolism has adapted to 1,500 calories, so his body doesn't need the extra calories he started to consume. Let's take a look at Joe 1 year later. Now Joe is 41 years old, and look, just 1 year later, he weighs 203 pounds because he's increased his caloric intake. He's now 32% body fat, and he's doing it all on just 2,000 calories a day. That's 1,000 calories less than when he first started. And here's the saddest part. Joe is so alarmed over this weight gain that he decides to go back to the same commercial weight loss center to start the same process all over again. This is what we all know to be yo-yo dieting. Do you remember when Oprah Winfrey wheeled out her little red wagon? And do you remember what happened 1 year later after she gained all her weight back? Throughout the world, this exact same scenario plays out millions of times a year. In fact, it's happening right now. Okay, so we know what doesn't work. Now let's talk about what does work. One of the biggest differences between old legacy diet programs and the newer science-based protocol is the concept of individuality. Old programs required the enrollee to conform to its one-size-fits-all protocol. Today, it's just the opposite. Modern, science-based programs are now flexible enough to be individualized to each specific person. For example, the concept of individuality takes into account our unique characteristics: height, weight, gender, ethnicity, age, body fat, stress, and genetics all come into play. You are unique. The concept of individuality is like a triangle. The most important part of the triangle is nutrition. When it comes to eating, we all have our own individual food preferences and tastes. So the newer programs seek healthy foods that you can purchase at your local grocery store. And they identify the healthy foods that you actually like to eat. Next is exercise and activity. There are hundreds of thousands of exercises, activities, and routines. Determining the right exercises and activities that are specific to your current physical condition, abilities, and goals are key to your progression. And finally, as an option, some people may find they benefit from various nutritional supplements. Here's why nutrition is so important. Your body requires a balance of protein, carbohydrate, and fat. This balance is essential because all nutrients within your body work synergistically together. They're dependent upon one another to complete the conversion from food to fuel. Fad diets that prescribe extreme ratios, such as eliminating almost all carbohydrates, actually inhibit the body's ability to function optimally, and they often create new problems. Structured dieting and weight loss programs have been around since the 1700s. But it wasn't until 1991 that the American Medical Association finally came out and stated, "A comprehensive weight control program, one which includes exercise, is the only effective treatment for long-term weight reduction and weight control." That's quite a statement. But what kind of exercise? How much exercise and how often? Again, that depends on your current physical condition, your abilities, and your goals. However, when it comes to long-term weight management, the most effective exercise programs will include both aerobic and anaerobic activity. Here's the simple reason why. Remember, in order to burn fat, oxygen is required. And the best way to get oxygen into your body is through aerobic activity. Anaerobic activity increases muscle activity. Muscle tissue is where fat is ultimately burned as fuel. So the more muscle and muscle activity you have, the more fat you will burn. Supplements are just that. They supplement a healthy menu and a consistent exercise program. While technology has improved food preservation and distribution, the same cannot be said for its effect on food quality. For the most part, technology has either depleted or lowered the quality of foods. Today's modern foods are affected by pesticides and chemicals, cooking and heat, modified animal feeds, and genetically altered foods, otherwise known as GMOs. Among many health professionals, supplementation is more of an insurance policy as a way for the body to receive the nutrients that may have been removed. Supplementation is a personal decision that should be discussed with your health professional as well as your own physician. This is especially true for anyone taking medication. So now you know the components required to achieve long-term permanent weight management. As mentioned in the beginning, if you take away just one thing from this presentation, it's knowing to focus on fat loss instead of weight loss. Next, conduct due diligence on yourself by learning as much as you can about how your body actually functions. Learn as much as you can about foods. Become a food expert. Then design a menu for your own body's needs. Unless you're already a professional, retain a fitness expert or trainer who can not only test and assess your current physical condition, but also design a viable exercise program around you and your goals. Be consistent and exercise at least 4 days a week, and be sure to keep a log or use an app to chart your progress. If you decide that supplementation is for you, then learn all you can about nutritional supplements. Take only that which you need. Remember, high-quality, nutritious food should always be your first choice. And then be consistent. So, in summary, after developing your own individualized personal health strategy, the most important thing you do next is this: take action.